Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the suspected Kenyan serial killer claims to have mutilated and murdered dozens of women over just a couple of years. Also, ballot papers are counted for Rwanda's general election. But there are unlikely to be any surprises, as President Paul Kagame is all but guaranteed to be returned by a landslide for a fourth term. And women's rights campaigners have celebrated Gambian Parliament's rejection of a bill that would have allowed legal female genital mutilation to return, a practice that's been banned since 2015. But first, a Kenyan man's reportedly confessed to brutally killing 42 women, including his wife. Police say that Collins Jumaisi admitted to having murdered repeatedly since 2022 and had dumped many dismembered bodies in a rubbish tip in Nairobi, not far from his home. Clem Vala tells us more.
After the gruesome discovery of 9 bodies left Kenya in shock over the weekend, answers are starting to arrive. On Monday, the Kenyan police announced they had apprehended a suspect in a bar in Soweto at 3 a.m. during a joint law enforcement operation. The man confessed to killing at least 42 women, including his wife, since 2022.
We have this morning arrested the prime suspect, known as Collins Jumaisi Khalusa, 33 years old. But from the look of things, it is crystallizing that we are dealing with a serial killer.
The mutilated and dismembered bodies were discovered on Friday in plastic bags left at a dump site located in the south of Nairobi. The relatives of one of the missing women pushed to search the quarry. Police said several smartphones, identity cards and a machete were found in the suspect's home close to the dump.
And most of them have got very serious injuries and cut. And we insisted that now the police has to come and comb this place and do a thorough search. And in the process, within less than two hours, we've received other 2 bodies from this pit.
There were concerns that the bodies could be linked to abductions and arrests of young people during recent anti-government protests. While the suspect is expected to be arraigned in court on Tuesday, human rights groups have called on Kenya's security agencies to expedite investigations into all reports of enforced disappearances.
Well, vote counting's underway after Rwanda's presidential and parliamentary elections on Monday. President Paul Kagame is set to cruise to a 4th term and victory again. He's been the country's de facto leader since ending the 1994 genocide and is the only one most Rwandans, most of whom are under 30, has ever known. He faces only 2 challengers after several prominent critics were barred from standing. Our regional correspondent was at a polling station in Kigali earlier on Monday and sent us this.
It's the end of election day here in Kigali. Lots of people turned out to vote, which is the norm in Rwanda. Many of the people that I spoke to at this polling station were young voters, which was the case in many of the 2,500 stations across the country. This year, half of those registered to vote are under the age of 30. Paul Kagame has been in power for 24 years, so for most of them, he's the only leader they've ever known. He's often seen as a strong defender of peace and security in the country, in a region that's often turbulent.
This vote is an opportunity for us as the youth to choose who's going to lead us into the next 5 years so that we can achieve our goals. Our youth, we have many goals. We need the jobs, we need more education, more services, healthcare services.
I'm just hoping for even more better things to happen, honestly. And I think casting this vote is just, for me, just securing more of the future that we've been building, the past and what we've been building for the past 30 years.
We have come from far and we are in the right direction right now.
Kagame is facing off against the only 2 contenders who were allowed to run. They're the same political opponents he faced in 2017. The other 6 candidates were prevented from running by the Electoral Commission. Frank Habineza is often considered his only real opponent. He was at this polling station earlier today to vote. One of the issues that he's highlighted throughout his campaign is unemployment, which is high, especially among the youth.
Liv Bizo there for us. Now, at least 9 people have been killed in a car bombing in Mogadishu. There were scenes of panic as the explosion went off late on Sunday near the Top Coffee restaurant as crowds of people gathered to watch the Euro 2024 final. No one's yet claimed responsibility for the blast, but state media has accused al-Shabaab extremists for the attack. The groups waged an insurgency against Somalia's fragile federal government for over 17 years. Well, rights campaigners are relieved at Gambian lawmakers' decision to reject a bill that would have meant the return of legal female genital mutilation. It was a close call, as the bid to overturn a ban that's been in place since 2015 got the overwhelming backing of MPs as recently as March. But earlier this month, the government's health and gender experts recommended the ban stay in place. Our regional correspondent talks us through.
The decision comes as a surprise after months of heated debate. In March, the vast majority of lawmakers had voted to advance the bill on the basis that the practice is cultural and religious. But this week, the MPs rejected all the clauses of the text. It is a big victory for women's rights activists who have been in the front line in the past months. On Monday, they gathered in front of the parliament to express their joy. But they say the fight against FGM is not over.
So our government has a moral obligation to ensure that now that the bill has been maintained, that we ensure that along with implementation, we're also educating people about the law.
Those who are yet to be convinced that banning is a good thing should open their minds and their hearts. Let's receive the information that is being given to us. Not only does it have harmful effects, it is inconsistent with the provisions of our constitution.
The Gambia has one of the highest rates of FGM in the world. According to UNICEF, 3 women out of 4 aged between 15 and 49 having already undergone the practice.
Sarah Sacco there for us. Now, the first stage of talks organised by the African Union aimed at getting more Sudanese forces together to find a negotiated solution to the country's devastating war and to plan an eventual transition back to civilian rule has wrapped up in Ethiopia. The 5-day gathering struggled to make much progress, though. Clotilde Azar tells us more.
After 5 days of heated discussion, key Sudanese political and civilian groups at the African Union's talks released a statement agreeing that they want the war to end and that they are committed to the respect for human rights and Sudan's return to democracy. But divisions remain and there are some missing voices that are hard to ignore, like Sudan's largest civilian coalition, Takadum, which held its own peace talk here in Ethiopia in May. One of its leaders did attend this latest AU event, but not as a Takadum representative. Satin Reldin is a diplomat helping navigate the contentious issues about Sudan's post-war political process. He said a way forward relies on inclusivity.
The vision we've adopted now includes an openness towards others, and that hasn't been easy. This group didn't want to talk to Takadum, but now they've expressed a desire to talk to Takadum, and it won't be easy, but we're going to continue our efforts with the African Union, with IGAD, and with regional and international partners to make sure that this dialogue really gets off the ground.
Participants also condemned war crimes blamed on the Rapid Support Forces and called for an end to foreign support for the combatants. The criticism came without the backing of the AU, though. It says it's not taking sides. The RSF has been battling the Sudanese army for supremacy since last April. There have been several other external peace-seeking efforts to find a political solution to the conflict, including just earlier this month when Egypt hosted Sudanese delegations at a conference in Cairo.
Clotilde Azar there for us in Addis Ababa. Now, dozens of people have been killed in an intense militia attack in Western DR Congo. A ceasefire deal between the army and rebels brokered by the president earlier this year appears to have broken down. Emmett Livingston brings us more from Kinshasa.
At least 40 people have been killed in western Congo, where a brutal conflict has raged in the Kwamut region since 2022. Details remain unclear, but Congolese army spokesman General Sylvain Ekenge told us that 9 soldiers and 35 militia fighters had been killed. Other reports suggested that at least 15 people had been killed. The attack occurred at 5 a.m. on Saturday in Kinsele, a small town only 130 kilometers from central Kinshasa. The conflict in western Congo was initially triggered in 2022 by a land dispute between the Teke and Yaka communities, but it quickly morphed into an armed insurgency and ethnic massacres. A militia known as the Mobondo, composed of Yaka and other communities, has taken over large swathes of Kwamut and has displaced tens of thousands of people. Clashes, however, seem to have eased up this year. And in April, Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi brokered a ceasefire deal. That agreement now appears to be dead in the water. Little about the nature of this conflict is clear. The Congolese government has forbidden journalists to travel to 3 of the affected provinces, and NGOs are mostly active along the Congo and Kwa rivers, but not in the lawless interior of Kwamut, where most of the violence is taking place.
Emmett Livingston there for us in the Congolese capital. And finally, the party does not stop, at least for a couple more days, for the thousands of Nigerians in Agadez who've been celebrating Banu. The festival is a huge annual event in the key northern city, and it's been drawing people from across the region since the Middle Ages. And though it coincides with the Islamic event of Ashura, the first month of the Muslim calendar, it's also a time to celebrate traditions and heritage of nomadic warriors. Our team obviously couldn't miss the chance of heading down.
In our culture, Banu celebration means joy, solidarity, unity, love, and peace. People are mostly getting ready for it by working hard on their clothes, food, or even decorations. Banu comes from religious beliefs, but today, because so many people are interested in it, it has become a cultural celebration where everyone is welcome. Every religion is invited because it has become national. Times are tough, that's right. But this is a celebration, so we can forget about everything. This is a tradition coming from our ancestors, and our children will carry it.
That's it for Eye in Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Take care.